Cecil B. DeMille moved the barn out of the Paramount lot, and it sat across the street from Capitol Records for several years.
Wow.
And people still today remember driving by and just seeing this barn that's just falling in disrepair, just sitting in a parking lot.
The natural contours of the canyon were smoothed over with concrete with benches, and now we have these boxes here. Did I read that that actually had, unfortunately, the effect of ruining the natural acoustics?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Ringo Starr likes to come up here from what I've heard. And look, you can almost touch these letters. We're so close to Capitol Records.
It's really a treat to be up here.
At the turn of the 20th century, Hollywood was about as far from Tinseltown as you could get. Founded in 1887 by an ardent prohibitionist and a devout Episcopalian, it began as a country hamlet of lemon groves and horse barns in what was then known as the Cahuenga Valley, a community that abhorred gambling, liquor, and popular entertainment. Wealthy migrants planted orchards and sumptuous gardens around baronial mansions, drawn by the prospect of a refined ranching life in an idyllic California retreat. The most celebrated of these estates belonged to painter Paul de Longpre, whose rose gardens drew sightseers to Hollywood long before movie stars ever did. And among those early tourists was filmmaker D.W. Griffith, who in 1910 quietly shot the first motion picture ever made in Hollywood, right there in de Longpre's garden. The community that looked down on popular entertainment was already losing the argument. 3 years later, another filmmaker would arrive, and Hollywood would never be quite the same ever again.
Hi,
Angie, hi. So excited to be here at the barn.
Welcome to the barn.
This barn is about as close as you can get to the birth of Hollywood as we know it.
Right? I mean, the barn is our main artifact. You know, even though we're up here in our archives right now, I always tell everybody, this barn tells us several different stories. And it now, sadly, is the oldest structure still standing in Hollywood.
You have some amazing photographs here. This is not what people picture as Hollywood today.
It wasn't part of Los Angeles City yet. We were kind of part of what was called the Cahuenga Valley. We had the Cahuenga Lemon Exchange. In fact, that's what this barn was really kind of utilized for, was part of the groves.
Yeah, that's around, what, 1910? Mm-hmm. And now let's fast forward 3 years, 3.5 years or something like that. And this barn comes into the picture, and also a man named Cecil B. DeMille.
The Squaw Man really kind of took interest to Cecil B. DeMille and Jesse Lasky and Samuel Goldfish because it was the top play at the time.
Yeah. The play was actually adapted into a novel.
So why not
Again,
make it
it's
a
what you
successful
call
movie?
like hot IP. Like there's a best-selling book.
They wanted it to be a full-length feature, meaning it was gonna be, you know, at least 50 minutes. It's not gonna be these little shorts, which is, again, very experimental because could you get people to sit in a theater? Here's a letter pertaining to an actress by the name of Red Wing. The Squaw Man was a story of Native Americans, and Red Wing was one of our earliest of the Native American actresses. This was them bringing Red Wing here and being part of that film as well.
So this letter documents basically her hiring then?
Yep.
And it's just written to Sam Goldfish.
Yeah,
So
Sam Goldfish on there.
Well, that was his name, right? And then signed by DeMille here in pencil.
Exactly.
Wow.
They decided that the East Coast was just not going to be a place to film this. So what they did is decide to move west. Cecil B. DeMille got into a train, went to Flagstaff, Arizona, December 1913, and realized it wasn't the climate. It was cold, it was damp, it was rainy, and got right back on the train and went far west as it could, which was Los Angeles. And then what he did was he stayed at the Alexandria Hotel. So what he ended up doing was sending a telegram back to Jesse L. Lasky and Goldfish out in New York and said, I'm gonna rent this barn.
Yeah.
And we have what rarely ever comes out on display is the original lease agreements.
Oh, wow. For this barn.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
At the time, the property was owned by a gentleman by the name of Jacob Stern.
Okay.
And he was an up-and-coming real estate, and he had a beautiful mansion that sat right across the street from the barn off of Selma and Vine.
I think I've seen a picture of that.
Yeah.
You have a picture of that
I
over there,
do.
right there, postcard.
Yep, gardens
Actually,
too.
not just a picture, a postcard. So Hollywood already had this tourism
yeah,
industry, and then
exactly.
it was homes and gardens.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you have L.L. Burns and Revere. Those were the two gentlemen that were also leasing the barn to be a developing lab.
Okay, yeah.
Would later on start the Western Costume Company that we're familiar with too.
So DeMille was almost he was a subletter in
Yep.
some ways.
Yep.
So this is interesting. It's entered into the 24th day of December.
Yep.
It's Christmas Eve,
Yep.
1913. And then on the back, we have here signing for Jesse L. Lasky Feature Play Company is Cecil B. DeMille, General Manager, Lasky.
So it's probably one of his earliest autographs.
This is pretty close to a document of the birth of Hollywood.
Yes.
Certainly the birth of what we know as Paramount today.
Yes, and those copies are actually Jacob Stern's personal copies. And then Cecil B. DeMille's collection is actually at BYU. So there's just the two sets of copies. And we have different revisions because, at first it was just a couple-month lease. It's all Jesse L. Lasky gave him approval for. But then they were able to expand just on that Selma and Vine lot and make stages and eventually almost kind of add like glass house effects where they can film finally inside and have the lights because they just didn't have the lighting technology. So even an indoor scene was filmed outside.
Now, of course, they didn't need sound stages.
No.
No. Because there was no sound.
Exactly. Enter 1916, where we partner with another gentleman by the name of Adolf Zucker, and they want to bring in more of these full-length featured films, which is hard to get distribution at the time because people were used to the shorts.
Right.
And that's where Paramount comes in. They needed to also have control and start having their own distribution, so they acquire Paramount Pictures.
So this is the original Paramount lot.
Yes, on
which
Salmon Vine.
actually grew out of the Stern Ranch.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Adolf Zucker had a lot of the big actresses. He had somebody by the name of Mary Pickford.
Oh, okay.
I love this photo. This is actually her with the barn in the background. And this is on the Salmon Vine,
So when Paramount moved, the barn moved too.
Yes.
Now that wasn't its final move though, because the barn is not. We're not on the Paramount lot right now.
No.
We're across from the Hollywood Bowl.
No, there's another move
Yeah.
in there. A couple moves in there, actually.
Wow.
Even moved a few times on the lot. But when it was on the lot, probably the longest of its life was a Paramount gym. It got moved, but that's because there was another preservation save in the meantime, which was in 1956. Cecil B. DeMille had gotten word that he thought the barn might be demolished back then. So what they did is they worked with people like John Anson Ford, and they were able to make this a California landmark. And it was the first entertainment-related anything to get landmark status. Wow. So that was the big save. And moved the barn out of the Paramount lot, and it sat across the street from Capitol Records for several years.
Oh, wow.
And people still today remember driving by and just seeing this barn that's just falling in disrepair, just sitting in a parking lot. And then that's where Hollywood Heritage comes. It was formed by 5 women who in 1978 where they're like, there's no preservation in Hollywood. And one of those ladies, Marion Gibbons, she got wind that Universal Studios might acquire the barn. And she's like, you can't take a Paramount structure and give it to Universal. So that's when they're like, this is going to be one of our very first big saves. So John Anson Ford, the ladies went to him.
He was
like,
a county supervisor?
help us. And he knew about this property here across from the Hollywood Bowl because there was actually supposed to be a museum here in the 60s. And by eminent domain, a lot of the homes were removed and demolished. So it was always earmarked to have a museum here. So we could tell early Hollywood agricultural story all the way to where Hollywood as entertainment started from this little barn.
Just from this one structure?
Yes.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad it's been saved multiple times now.
Yeah.
The arrival of the movie people unsettled many of Hollywood's old guard. Film crews were noisy, actors were disreputable, and the whole enterprise seemed to threaten the quiet, respectable character of the community they'd built. But the movies were here to stay, and within a few years, a different kind of cultural project was taking shape, just up the hills in the Cahuenga Pass. If the barn represented Hollywood's commercial dreams, the bowl represented something else. The belief that this improbable new city deserved a cultural life equal to its ambitions. The idea was radical for its time, an outdoor performing arts venue where symphonic music could be accessible not just to those who could afford it, but to everyone. In 1920, 2 members of the Theater Arts Alliance went searching the Hollywood Hills for a place to make it happen, and found it in a sagebrush canyon where their voices carried across the landscape, a natural amphitheater then called the Daisy Dell.
And now, pardon a little low flying, let's circle over the world-famous Hollywood Bowl, an outdoor theater embraced by hillsides that give it perfect acoustics.
Next door to this now iconic venue, the Hollywood Bowl Museum holds documents that tell the story of how that idea became a reality. Museum director Liliana Grubasic and archives manager Michelle Beecham were kind enough to show me some of them.
One of my favorite documents is actually the satisfaction of mortgage. And there's a story that they actually burned a copy of it on the stage.
Oh, like the original mortgage document. We don't need this anymore.
Yep.
Wow.
The Alliance secured the land, and the Hollywood Bowl was born. From the beginning, the audiences came. Among their earliest events was an Easter sunrise service that drew thousands of Angelenos into the hills before dawn. Streetcars running as early as 3 in the morning to carry them there.
The postcards are such an interesting part of the collection.
We are going out to catch an Easter service, daylight on Easter morning. We leave here at 4 a.m. and hear first trumpets up on mountain. So there were people playing trumpets up on the ridgeline.
Yes.
Of course, there's no better place to talk about the Hollywood Bowl's history than the bowl itself. I met up there with writer Derek Traub. His book for the LA Philharmonic tells the Bowl's 100-year history not as a straight chronology, but as a set of ideas that have shaped the place from the start.
This is an LA institution, the Hollywood Bowl. It's one of the most magical places to spend a summer evening. It's a marvel of engineering.
Yeah.
There's some amazing pictures from the early days with thousands of people.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was literally just like a makeshift wooden stage with, a 100-piece orchestra on it. So there were about 24 founders of this place and probably as many ideas for what to do with it. Christine Wetherell Stevenson, who was one of the first of them, she was a theosophist and believed in bringing together the world's 7 great religions through 7 different art forms. And she wanted to do these religious plays here. The other founders had other ideas, so she packed up and went across the street and created the Pilgrimage Playhouse, which is now the Ford Theater. The sort of prevailing idea here came from a woman named Artie Mason Carter, who was a piano teacher. She had this idea for using this space, the Hollywood Bowl, for a summer of symphony concerts, 4 nights a week, 10 weeks out of the year. And this had never been done before anywhere. William Andrews Clark Jr., who had just founded the orchestra of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, she sort of tried to talk him into lending his orchestra for this summer-long series, and he says, no one is going to pay for these concerts. No one's like, I'm just going to be out so much money for this. Yeah. In that first summer in 1922, that was just an overnight success, and it still is. Not only did they not lose money, but they started to make money. And in 1926, they finally had enough resources to put in the permanent benches. This kind of shape of the amphitheater, it's like a big balloon, is designed by an architect named Myron Hunt.
Yes, and there's a connection there to the other bowl, right?
Yes.
the Rose Bowl.
Yes. The shape of this place, it fits so naturally into the canyon.
Mecca for lovers of music and spectacles is Hollywood Bowl. Tremendous outdoor amphitheater where the outstanding orchestras and soloists of the world perform. With a capacity for some 12,000, this great bowl presents programs of every type for every taste.
So the natural contours of the canyon were smoothed over with concrete with benches, and now we have these boxes here. Did I read that actually had, unfortunately, the effect of ruining the natural acoustics?
Yeah, unfortunately. There was this sort of like belief in the time that sort of man can conquer nature and improve upon it. Like we have our LA River, and this sort of a similar idea happened here where it's like we can make this dusty canyon into this perfect canyon by pouring concrete and putting these permanent benches in, which is nice. We have this permanent seating area, but it did start to mess with that natural resonance. So the sound is better now than it ever has been, but it's been kind of a journey over the last 100 years to sort of recreate what was originally here.
This amazing shell we see here
Yes.
is not the first.
Yeah, a lot of people think when we say bowl that the bowl indicates the shell. No, the bowl is the canyon.
Yeah.
The name bowl predates the shell. The LA Phil started doing concerts here in 1921, 1922. The first shell doesn't go in until 1926 for a few reasons. One, that was when they laid all the concrete and the sound started to get wonky. So they're like, okay, let's put up something to hopefully reflect the sound out a little bit better. And the second reason was we had an orchestra rehearsing here during the day in the summer, and they were tired of sitting under the hot sun.
I can imagine.
We cycled through 4 shells in the 1920s while they were playing around with the aesthetics and the acoustics and could never quite settle on one. And then in 1929, they put in a shell, and we have the stock market crash and other kind of priorities change. So they're like, though they didn't think it was going to be a permanent shell, they left it, and it survived until 2003. It's a pretty good run.
So after the war, the Bowl fell on really hard times, and it was in danger of closing for a while.
In 1951, the Bowl went bankrupt. They started with this big opera production that no one showed up for. There was some bad weather, there was some like misgauging of the interest in it, and so they were out of money to pay the musicians. And we had survived a Great Depression and World War II and all these ups and downs, and all of a sudden in 1951, we weren't going to have a Hollywood Bowl season for the first time in almost 30 years. A philanthropist and a business leader and a brilliant woman named Dorothy Chandler was roped in. She was the wife of Norman Chandler, who is the publisher of the LA Times.
The ruling family of Los Angeles, essentially.
Yeah, you could take like the Vanderbilts and the Astors and the Rockefellers and put them into one, and that's the Chandlers.
Right.
That's how influential and important they were. And Dorothy Chandler was sort of this society wife, and so she went to work as a volunteer. And so they bring her in 1951. The place is in like $100,000 worth of debt. And in 12 days, she turns it around. She moves into our then music director's house, Alfred Wallenstein, gets out his Rolodex, calls every great musician across the country who's been playing here for decades. She had that sort of Artie Carter vibe of like the community needs to be bought in and invested. So she started a fundraising campaign, used her husband's newspaper, the LA Times, to advertise it. And yeah, they raised the $100,000, got the place back open in 12 days.
So Artie Carter championed classical music.
Yes.
The Hollywood Bowl stages a lot of popular music shows too. What would she think about that? How would she feel about, Jimi Hendrix or the Beatles up here?
Artie Carter would probably be a little skeptical of all of the music that we present at the Hollywood Bowl. She was a bit of a purist. But we have, for all of our classical and all of our jazz shows, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, we offer thousands of $1 tickets. Correcting for inflation, a $1 ticket in 2026 is a lot cheaper than a 25-cent ticket in 1926. So I think the fact that the egalitarian impulse of the Hollywood Bowl is still alive and well, I think would make her very happy.
It's easy to say that Carter was ahead of her time, but Carter and DeMille, this democratizing impulse, isn't universally shared in the classical music community, even today.
Yeah, no, it was very controversial at the time to do just symphony concerts for everyone. And it is like still today, we have the largest audience for orchestral music in the country gathered here each summer, and other orchestras, other places ask us, how do you do that? And it's like, we can't tell you, you just need to go back in a time 100 years and create a Hollywood Bowl. Amazing.
Cheers.
All right, cheers to another 100 years.
There you go.
By the mid-20th century, Hollywood had become something no lemon rancher could have imagined. A cultural capital whose influences stretched across the globe. In 1956, that transformation assumed physical form just off the corner of Hollywood and Vine with the construction of the Capitol Records Tower, the world's first circular office building, and one of the most recognizable silhouettes on the LA skyline. I met up there with vintage Los Angeles' Alison Martino, whose father, Al Martino, is among the music legends to record inside.
So Alison, I can't believe there's a controversy about this, but apparently some people don't believe that this is a stack of records.
Some people don't believe it, some people do believe it. It is kind of an urban myth, but look at it. I always wanted to believe it was a stack of records. I was told it was a stack of records when I was a kid, but I think that it's never been confirmed. Although Louis Nadeau, who was the architect for the building, they say did not know what the project was when he was building it.
It was a top secret Project X.
It was called Project X.
Yeah.
He had done a thesis when he was studying architecture at Berkeley about the future of office buildings and computers and how computers would be taking over, and maybe you didn't need as much space as time went on, and he wanted to make like a futuristic round building. This is for his thesis.
Yeah.
This is like 1951, and he's like 19 or 20. Then when he got this project, he was working for Walton Beckett and Associates.
Yeah, famous architectural firm in LA, done so many amazing structures here.
Greatest buildings from LAX to the Pan Pacific to the Beverly Hilton, we can go on and on. I think Louis may have pulled a little inspiration from that thesis.
So Alison, we're in for a real treat today, or at least I am. I know you've been in there many times, but we're able to go inside the building today. Now they're doing some preservation work, so a lot of places we can't see, but we're gonna go to the lobby and take a look.
I'm so excited to go back inside.
All right, let's go. So, Alison, you stopped by your car and grabbed some treasures from the vintage Los Angeles archive.
I could have brought like suitcases full of stuff, but I do have some interesting Capitol Records memorabilia from back in the day. One of my favorites is this tray.
Oh.
You know, TV dinners were kind of popular in the 50s, and it showed who the artists were at the time. As you know, and I'm sure you've heard, Nat King Cole was the hottest seller of Capitol Records at the time, and they would call this actual building the house that Nat built.
Oh, sort of a play on Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built. Yeah.
Right. And then some of the other, their catalog at the time. It's interesting, Capitol Records in the 50s was a little reluctant to sign rock acts.
Really?
And, you know, RCA and Decca and Columbia had that. I think they were a little Elvis scared.
This was when rock and roll was a little new,
yeah,
a little
it was
edgy.
New, and Elvis was on the Ed Sullivan Show and all that.
Shaking his
you know,
hips.
and I think they were like, well, because it's a fad, let's stick with Dean Martin right now, you know. And so little did they know that 7 years later the Beatles were around the corner. So I think they made the right move by waiting for the Beatles to come on and change the world.
A capital act.
A capital act. Yeah. Probably the most important thing I brought was my dad's gold record. And here it is. This is what they would present an artist when they hit a certain amount of sales.
I don't think I've ever seen one of these up close.
This is what they look like, and they were done like linen and wood with the plaque.
Because this was a big deal, right?
This was when you made it. This entire lobby was filled with these. You couldn't even see the marble.
So you and your dad would walk in here through the lobby.
He would point it out.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah,
right?
it was very fun.
Yeah.
Years ago, they took them all down, and luckily we were able to receive this.
Wow, which is in many ways probably
Yeah.
more important, right?
Yeah,
Like it's the one that you
I
saw,
think this one has been, because I mean, Paul McCartney like walked by this, you know? Oh, by the way, here's my dad. Okay,
there he is.
No, but I'm not bringing this because you know what? I'll tell you why I'm bringing this. Because I'm on the back.
Oh, this, wow.
We had no idea that this was what they would
snuck you
shoot.
in.
They did.
Whoa.
But we didn't know it was going to be on the back.
This is a beautiful photo and a beautiful backside of a record cover.
It's very sweet.
Yeah.
Hey, look, there's my record store. Now, right next door, we have Capitol Records Recording Studio.
Glenn Wallach, who had the first record store before Tower Records.
Yeah.
It was Wallach's Music City. He created shrink wrap for records. Yeah. So if you had gone around the country going to record stores, they were usually behind the counter.
So you just go to the clerk and say, I'm looking for this record.
Right.
And we'll go back and see
and
if we
he
have
had
it.
an idea of flipping through records. Maybe you'd buy more, maybe you'd learn more. So he thought this would be a great idea. So this was...
He essentially invented the modern record store.
When Glenn Wallach opened Wallach's Music City, it was called Television Corner. Because you had NBC, you had Wallach and Dot Records.
This is down there, is it Selma?
Sunset and Vine.
Sunset and
Sunset
Vine,
and
right.
Vine.
Kind of close to where the Cinerama Dome is.
Right there.
Yeah. In many ways, Capitol Records is a child of this record store. So your dad recorded here in the studios right back here.
Yes.
And so you must have been in and out all the time.
I came here quite a bit, but what I really enjoyed seeing was the musicians. Because back in Studio A is a very, very large studio where you could fit 40 people, 50 people, full orchestra. And it was just fascinating to me.
Now, speaking of the studios, I mean, that is one of the things that made this place so revolutionary, aside from the architecture.
Yes.
These are some special studios with some special things underneath, right?
The echo chambers
yes,
are downstairs.
The famous echo chambers.
That are very, very, very famous and that were created by Les Paul.
Right, the guitar genius, right?
He wanted some reverb. You know, we didn't have the technology then, so he decided, like, why don't we come up with like a chamber? We go underground and we build like a safe room kind of a thing, you know, and we connect a wire up to the recording, to the soundboard, and it would go down and a big speaker would play the music down there and they'd sing over it and it would have this echo and this like sort of reverb and it would signal back up to the studio and they'd mix it in. And sometimes they'd layer it on top of each other so that you can really hear it on Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. That's where you can really hear the echo chamber effect.
And so do these echo chambers create a signature Capitol sound?
Yes, yes. And there's, once you kind of catch on to that sound and you're listening to music, you might say, is that a Capitol album? That must be a Capitol artist.
That's the kind of thing that you can do when you're building a building from scratch explicitly for a record company.
That's why I think this does stand the test of time as the the greatest record company in the West Coast because it was built for that.
So the echo chambers, unfortunately, we can't go see that. But another place that is usually off limits that we are able to go see is the Rooftop. And I understand you've been up there before, but we're gonna go up there now. You want to go take a look?
I'm so excited.
Okay.
This tower rose at the very moment that Hollywood began to fall. The golden age had dawned just 2 blocks away in a barn on a lemon ranch. But by 1956, radio and TV production were deserting the neighborhood, the movies had long since decamped for Burbank and Culver City, and the old glamour was fading fast. Yet the Capitol Records Tower kept the faith, its rooftop beacon blinking out Hollywood in Morse code. And from that vantage point, 13 floors above the Walk of Fame, you can still read the whole story.
So this might be not just the best view in Hollywood, but in all of the city.
I absolutely agree with you. There's nothing like it, and it feels like we're much higher than 13 stories because we're up on a hill.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an illusion to it.
Right.
Yes,
I mean, look behind us, the Hollywood Hills and the Hollywood,
and the 101 freeway.
And as you're going around the circle,
these
you're now
beautiful
seeing
old neon signs, yeah.
And the Pantages is right over there, the Knickerbocker was over here.
And we can even see a little sliver of the Pacific Ocean over there, the Santa Monica Bay down
that's
beyond Century
crazy.
City, and yeah.
I can see why Ringo Starr likes to come up here from what I've heard. And look, you can almost touch these letters. We're so close to Capitol Records.
So 1956, it's sort of this transitionary time for Hollywood, right? A lot of TV and radio production, which used to be centered around this very famous intersection, Hollywood and Vine. In some ways, one of the most famous intersections in the world, right? This was sort of LA's Times Square.
The stretch of what Johnny Mercer's wife called the capital of the industry.
In many ways, this announced Hollywood's arrival as the entertainment capital of the world. I know that some other cities claim that. I know. I mean, Las Vegas, really? No.
I know. No, that's a different show, different thing. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be up here
this is amazing. You can really see that there are all these layers of Hollywood history here.
Yeah, this is layers of time right here.
In little more than a century, the quiet country hamlet of Hollywood became one of the most mythologized places on Earth. 3 landmarks tell that story: a barn, a bowl, a tower, each one a monument to a different kind of dream, layered one on top of another in a neighborhood that Hollywood forgot it used to be.